I want to talk a little bit about how we go about appreciating wines. You'll often see people out somewhere and they're swishing the glass around and they're sticking their nose in the glass. And what is it they're doing? What are they up to over there? So, a few things. First of all, when you order a wine, if you're at a restaurant, maybe the glass is just given to you and you don't have this opportunity. But sometimes you'll be able to see the bottle, and looking at the label is sort of the first thing to take a look at and notice about a wine, because it'll tell you things like the varietal, which is the grape that's in the wine. It could tell you about whether there's a blend of grapes that are in there. It'll tell you about the region that the wine is from, so whether it's from the United States or France or Argentina or somewhere else. And it'll also tell you about the year. And those are important things to keep track of, because as you try to figure out the wines that you like and the ones that you gravitate toward, knowing the varietals or the regions and the good years of those varietals and regions can really set you on the right track to picking wines. The other thing that we always look at is color. And in the case of a white wine, the paler that the white wine is, the less likely it is that it's spent any time being in an oak barrel. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you a brighter, kind of fresher taste, where you'll get more kind of notes of apple and citrus and things like that. It'll be lighter bodied. And then the darker that it is, generally speaking, it's probably spent some time aging in oak, and will start to bring out those woody qualities and have a fuller flavor. Similarly with red wines, when you take a look at it, red wines can be anywhere from sort of a translucent light red, almost with a kind of a brownish color to it, to something that's very rich and ruby red, to very dark reds that start to bring in colors of blue and purple. And all of that tells you a little bit about is going to be an indicator of some of the characteristics of the wine. So in the case of red wines, that color is coming from the skins. All grape juice, when it's pressed, is clear or nearly clear. But in the case of red wines, those skins are left in the wines, and it sort of steeps, sort of like tea does, and gets the color into the wine, and also gets flavors of what's in that skin into the wine. And you would expect when you see a red wine that's pretty translucent or a lighter color, that it generally will have a lighter body to it, something more light and bright in flavor, kind of more fresh tasting than you would expect in something that's a little darker, where you'll start to get maybe deeper fruit qualities and other characteristics coming through, and a bolder, richer flavor. So paying attention to the color is definitely something that we do and look at, and it tells us a little about what to expect when we taste it. The next thing you always see people swirling these things around, and you can do it up in the air, or you can set the glass down on the table. But the purpose of doing that is getting a little bit of air in there to mix up with the wine, and it helps let the flavor or the smell come out. And if you can imagine, this is sort of a crude example, but if you ever stepped in, duty out in the yard, you may not notice it's there, but as soon as you step in it, man, you notice it. And wine's kind of the same way. When it's just sitting there and not interacting with the oxygen around it, it's only going to give off so much of an aroma. But swishing it around and getting a little air in there really unlocks those smells, and then we stick our nose in the glass and see what we can determine. Now, in smelling wines, wine is interesting because in any glass of wine, there could be up to 10,000 different chemicals in there that all have different aromatics to them. And that's why when people talk about them, they say, oh, I smell cherry, I smell strawberry, I smell asparagus, I smell tobacco, I smell rubber. You get all kinds of descriptions, and it's because on a molecular level, there are things in the wine that are similar to those molecules that give off those smells in other ways. And that complexity just comes from the fermentation process of grapes. It's not because other flavors have been added in. The wine wasn't, mixed with asparagus or anything like that. It just comes from that fermentation process and building a really complex matrix of different molecules. So that's part of what we do, and when you're swishing it around, the other thing that it does when it swishes around in the glass is it helps it evaporate because the wine goes up on the side of the glass, and those flavor, those aromas start to evaporate faster, and that's why right after swishing it around, you can really get a good sense of what those smells are. And it's great to smell the wine before you taste it because you there's part of the tasting, you may not pick up some of the notes of the aroma, and this is part of the fun of really getting a sense of the complexity of the different aromas that are in there. And then of course you taste it, and there's a few things that you're looking for in the taste. Number one is how those aromas that you smelled, how much do you now get a sense of them that you've tasted it. And also, as the wine goes down, there's something called a finish, and a finish is basically means how the wine kind of develops from the moment you first taste it to the moment you've swallowed it, and you're still letting those aromas and everything, come out. And the aroma and the smell and the taste can change. In that process. And so it's fun to pay attention to how those aromas change and what you pick up on that maybe you didn't when you were just smelling the wine. But then in tasting it, there's also the feeling of the wine in your mouth. And you'll get a sense, just as we were saying, when you look at color, it can look lighter bodied or more full bodied. And you'll sense that in the taste. Sometimes people describe wines as chewy, meaning they have like a really firmness to them. Other times, folks will say, "Oh, this is very light-bodied." Sometimes they say silky, which is a really smooth feeling in the mouth. So all of those things are fun to feel. And then there's also the feeling of the alcohol and the acidity of the wine, and getting a sense of the bitterness and the saltiness and the sweetness that your taste buds pick up. And then there's something called tannin, which is sort of a feeling. It's sort of a dry feeling on your tongue, almost as if someone took a paper towel and dabbed your tongue. That's not what that feeling is not dry, because dry just refers to the fact that there's no sugar left in the wine. But it's a lot of people describe it as a dry feeling, and that's called tannin, and it can really it can be very, very present and assertive, or a really mellow feeling. So that's one of the things that we look for when we taste wine. So all of those things together really are what people are trying to pay attention to when they're really trying to appreciate a wine. And I would encourage you to to look for those things yourself. Take a look at the label, learn a few things about the glass, smell it, see what interesting smells you can get out of it. It's sort of fun to see how many different smells you can identify. Taste it, pay attention to how it feels in your mouth, how it's tingly. Is it, acidic? Is it fruity? Is it, earthy in quality? And just pay attention to those things and enjoy those different sensory experiences. That's what it's all about. So with that, I welcome any comments or feedback, and hope you enjoy appreciating wine in the future.